Hi, I'm Wade Biery, and you're watching for BassPlayersOnly.com. Keep playing.
Hi, and welcome to ForBassPlayersOnly.com. I'm John Liedman, founder and first baseman. You know, a lot of people think they're too old or it's too late for them to learn how to play an instrument. So I created For Bass Players Only for adults who want to learn to play bass because I believe you're never too old and it's never too late to experience the joy and the pleasure of making music. For BassPlayersOnly.com. Let's play bass. I've got a special guest this week, Wade Biery, who is a multi-instrumentalist. One of those instruments happens to be the bass, of course. Wade has performed with everyone from Glenn Frey and Joe Walsh to Roger Daltrey, Joe Cocker, the Turtles, Christopher Cross, Don Felder. A lot of Eagles on that list. We'll have to talk about that. Leanne Rimes, the list goes on. He does a lot of online sessions, solo acoustic guitar shows, and he's got his own band, Still, all capital letters, which is described as a power pop, rock pop creative. And he's currently the bass player with Kenny Loggins. Hello, Wade, and welcome to For Bass Players Only.
Hey, John. Hey, everybody. Thanks for having me.
You're from Alaska originally, is that right?
I am. Yeah. In fact, I still, even though it's been, let's see, in 84, it'll be January 1st, 84. So 40 years coming up. I still kind of think of myself as an Alaskan. Yeah.
That's the day I moved to Miami, January 1st, 1984. Drove down from Detroit to Miami, down to University of Miami, and it took 2 days to do it because it was such a long drive, and my team was playing in the Orange Bowl, Bernie Kosar.
I remember that name, but I lack the sports ball gene, I must admit.
Well, I was there during Bernie Kosar and then Vinny Testaverde. And as far as football coaches from Michigan, I went from Bo Schembechler to Howard Schnellenberger in Miami.
I know the first name. I don't know the second one, but it's only just I've heard the sound stuck together.
All right. Well, back to you, Alaska. Oh, by the way, since you played with Roger Daltrey, do you know, and you're from Alaska, do you know John Button?
I do know John Button only a bit. We've met a few times at some of the local things here in LA, but I do know him, and I know a lot of the guys in that camp. I think
I asked because he's from Alaska and he played with The Who. So everybody in Alaska knows everybody else in Alaska, right?
Well, what it is more like everybody from Alaska down here in the community knows each other. Like I've met Jewel, but because of mutual friends and other Alaskan guys. I mean, yeah, so it's a small gang of us, and we do seem to know each other down here, but up there, I didn't know John then. And in fact, when I play with Felder, there's a guy named David Meyer, who's he looks like a model. I mean, and he is sometimes a model, much younger guy. He wasn't even born by the time I left Anchorage, but he plays second guitar with Felder, and he's from Anchorage. So
is it just a coincidence that you played with so many of the Eagles? Those were all separate gigs? The Eagles, yeah, the Eagles.
Yeah, well, coincidence. I played with Joe a bunch with Glenn. So they would call that the party of two. And so, and to be honest, I guess I'm probably not telling anything a lot of people don't know, but I was way more into Joe Walsh than I was into the Eagles. I really liked Joe Walsh's records. So whenever Joe was there, it was a little bit more of a treat for me. But Glenn would bring Joe in, and they would call that the party of two. And so that's how I played with Joe mostly, which I really enjoyed. Felder, the same guy that brought me into Glenn's thing, also introduced me to Felder. And obviously there's some rub there, I guess you could say, between those camps. So, exactly. It was kind of, that's you guys and I'll be over here, but yeah, it's an interesting situation. So I've played with a bunch of Eagles. Yeah. I think it was my friend Jonathan Clark who actually put me into that. Jonathan's great singer, great bass player. He's more into, I think, TV music now. Great guy though.
Let's talk about your early days in Alaska. How would you describe your musical upbringing? How were you exposed to music, and how, along with all the other instruments you learned to play, how did you become a bass player?
So there's long versions, and I'll go for the medium versions. I was definitely a kid who listened to AM radio, with the little thing. I'm
Yeah,
literally
me
today
too.
63. Today is my birthday, and I'm 63 today. So as pretty and young as I look, which is not really true today. But
Happy birthday. I told you before we were live, but I'll tell you publicly, happy birthday.
thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, it's been a really nice day so far. And this is part of that. In maybe the mid 60s, somewhere in there, I became aware of the sound of an acoustic guitar. And my dad had a really nice old Martin, which I have over here right now, actually. He's not with us anymore, but so I started sneaking into there to play it. And of course, I thought I was being sneaky, probably left like big smears of peanut butter and whatnot. And it was all about just getting out the sound. I could hear the sound. I just had to find a way to make the sound. And those were the instruments that I did that with. And I was in a high school band then as a guitar player originally, or maybe it was junior high actually. And then we had a bass player who had a problem, which was, as you would as you do in Alaska, when you drink too much, he had that guitar player twisty knobby disease. And
That's that's not inherent to Alaska, but go ahead.
no, it's not. It's very common malady. It goes around the music community quite a bit. And so he'd get hammered and start cranking up. And so we kind of got rid of him, and I just started playing bass. And basically I was playing guitar on bass. At first I was playing with a pick, and I was way overplaying. I think there are some people who would argue that I still do. And that's how I got into bass. And then I kind of discovered an affinity for it. And
Did you start listening to music differently when you heard the radio or you heard records? Did you pick out the bass? Did you have any bass player influences?
So that's a two-parter. For
You're
me,
right.
no, I didn't actually. I still mainly heard as a guitar player, and I can tell you exactly the instant when that changed. And it was I worked in a place in Juneau, Alaska. I was in high school in Juneau, Alaska, and they had a music room in the back. Remember with all the switchers, you could switch which turntable it was, which receiver, which speakers, right? So my friends were trying to get me to be a real bass player as opposed to a guitar player playing a bass. And they put on a record, cranked it up, stuffed me in there, and walked out. And that was School Days, Stanley Clarke. That's when I went, oh, okay, so you can play with serious aggression. You can be very upfront and kind of brutal, and still be playing bass. And I was okay, I'm down for that. And that totally sent me off down the whole Jocko, the Stanley Clarke, the Alphonso Johnson, all of that stuff, with probably Stanley Clarke and Jocko being the two that really made a dent in my head. And then I heard Don Juan's Reckless Daughter, sorry, Joni Mitchell, and Jocko played all over that, and Hejira, I think you said,
Yeah,
and
I know the one. Yeah.
those just bent me right around a pole. I was like, okay, that I can really get behind. But I never really gave up guitar. I just started getting better at bass.
There you go.
So
Well,
short pitch version, sorry.
no, that's great. How did your bass playing career initially get rolling?
Well, so in Alaska, I was a bit of a troubled youth, and I was getting into things. Um, some of the people that I ran with back then are no longer with us for various reasons having to do with that sort of stuff. But at one point, I got a gun stuck in my face. I'm not lying. That I actually had a guy stick a gun in my face at a drug thing. And after that, I said, okay, this is not really what I want to do. At the same time, concurrently with that sort of activity, I was starting to play with pretty good musicians around Anchorage. And I decided to use, music as a rope to get out of that. And, I was smarter than most of those guys. And I had this thing that I could do. And so I used music to get out of that and started playing around in some of the better bands in Anchorage. And there were some good ones. And there was one in particular where all the big concerts that would come up, tours, there was a arena up there, or is it arena, the George Sullivan Arena. And we started opening all the big rock shows. So by the time I was maybe 22, we had opened for Starship and Nazareth and Eddie Money. And, you know, we were doing real shows in a big place. And I was like, okay, so maybe I can do this, you know.
So, yeah, go ahead.
If we keep going, another buddy who is now one of the guitar players with Lucinda Williams, but he's tracked through the Wallflowers and Jewel. He and I were signed in a band with some of the guys from Men at Work back in the 80s. Some of the guys that left Men at Work were in the band on Chrysalis. It didn't really go anywhere, but really good band. But so then we kind of went through a lot of situations together. And so back then he came up to one of the bars I was playing in and said, dude, you know, you're too good to be here. You need to come down. Just come and stay on my floor, whatever, we'll make it work. And so in 84, that's what I did. And that's what started all this for me.
Okay. Wow.
That's sort of the condensed quick version.
No, that's great. We can fill in the gaps as we go. One of the names that I mentioned was the Turtles.
Mm-hmm.
Because Jim Pons just contacted me like last week, and we're lining up an interview. Do you know him, the original bass player from the Turtles?
No, not at all. Not at all. The reason I played with them, there's a guy named Tom Crucier. I hope I'm saying it right because I've known him for about almost 40 years. Tom, his brother is Juan from Rat, and Tom is a fantastic singer, songwriter, bass player. He actually played on some Scorpions records. Like it might be Rock You Like a Hurricane, might be Tom. I can't remember, but or I don't know if I ever really knew. So in that same time period when I first got down here, Tom had a band with my other friend from Alaska, and that was called Life by Night. And there's a song that was kind of well known called Phone to Phone. So you can look that up on Spotify. And Phone to Phone was a kind of almost got there, then quite kind of didn't. So Tom was playing later, much later, with the Turtles. He's a killer singer. This guy's just he used to make my hair stand up. It was unbelievable. So when I was with Life by Night, he would front with a guitar and I would play bass. And so there's more people in that band that have gone on to do all kinds of things, like the current drummer in REO that's been there for a long time, Brian Hitt, who has also spent time in Alaska. I know this is like just stream of consciousness. Sorry. He was the drummer in that band. And this is back in the like 86, 87, something like that. Anyway, Tom called me up and said, hey, man, I can't do a couple of dates. I think you'd be great. You want to go do it? And that's what ended up happening. I played with them quite a number of dates, maybe 30 to 50, something like that. They're such great guys, especially Mark. Mark and I really got along. He's the one with the big frizzy hair.
Now, which one is Flo? There's Flo and Eddie, right?
Yeah. I think Mark is Flo and Eddie is Howard.
Okay.
I think, you know, those guys, man, they know the music business. You cannot hear or speak about any music from the 60s and 70s. Those guys don't know the guy, have a story, and it's really funny. And they're just, I had a ball with those guys. I couldn't say enough nice things about those guys.
Oh, I'd love to talk to them. My dad was a rock and roll DJ in the 50s and 60s. So I'm 6 years old. He used to take us to the Dave Clark Five, the Lovin' Spoonful, the Association,
awesome.
And the Beatles. I saw the Beatles in 1966 at Municipal Stadium in Cleveland, where the Browns played and the Indians played.
It's amazing. Yeah. Well, you got to get right in your face. I mean, you know, I was in Alaska. So we were thinking, you know, we were studying along with like Asia or something, you know, we're trying to learn every note and trying to nail it, thinking that everybody just played like that. We didn't know that that was only about 5 people that played like that. And that that was not common to play like that, which I credit with being kind of good at this, is because my ethic was, that's the goal line. Sound like, play that record, play the whole record down, play it dead on. So that's what, you know, he's sitting in a dark room at 30 below in Anchorage, you know, like, oh shoot, I screwed up. So you got to go back and start the song over, you know, and that's what I would do.
So you can play the whole School Days album note for note.
Now, probably not. But I used to know how to play Lopsy Lou and School Days. I'm trying to think of some of the others. I have to admit, I mainly focus on the stuff that really got me animated.
Lopsy Lou was not on that one, but Hot Funk and The Dancer, Quiet Afternoon, and then the one with the upright. What's it called?
Sounds like you probably know it better than me. I have
Life
to
is
admit,
just a
if
game.
it didn't make my socks go up and down, that I wouldn't learn it. And it was really about the aggression. I was really into that, power and aggression. I mean, I was a aggressive young man at that time.
The desert song, I think it's called. What? Tell me about Still.
Well, still is I always wrote stuff. I always wrote little things. You remember those little rolling beatbox things? I can't remember what they called it.
Yeah.
I think it was before a 808. And a Porter studio, and I would put together, I didn't write music in the sense of songs. I just came up with cool grooves and would go from one groove to another. So I was always really into that. And I never thought of myself at that time as a vocal person. I just wrote cool patterns and stuck them together, and I just thought that was great. At one point, and it's almost like it happened instantaneously. I was driving back from something in Riverside and heading out towards where I lived in El Segundo, and I just had a song start playing in my head. And I was literally driving, and I'm writing words on a napkin, and in my head it was John Cougar's voice. John Cougar Mellencamp, that was the voice for it. And
wait a minute, you were driving and you were writing down on the.
Yeah. I hate texting drivers, but yeah, that's what I was doing. Back then, I don't know when that was, probably.
Oh, back then it was okay. Okay.
No, I don't think it was any more okay than it is now. No, it's just that there weren't any phones. So I just started writing lyrics, and I could hear the melody. I heard the whole thing in my head. So I just started recording it when I got home, and that was how I started. It was kind of weird that it suddenly was a little bit like a switch that just got flipped. And I started doing that, recorded a couple records basically alone by myself. Had some friends play drums, and I'm still very proud of that stuff. And if someone asked me, why would you say that you didn't keep doing it? I would say probably it was a combination of, I was married, and there was some animation towards, okay, so you're being offered these bigger gigs, and the records you didn't really go anywhere, didn't go the direction I thought they should or would. And we had there was quite a bit of financial pressure, putting together records on your own. And so gigs started coming. People would hear me play or whatever, and go, okay, so you want to go do this, you want to go do that, while you're waiting for your ship to come in, so to speak.
Yeah.
I'm actually writing a song called "Waiting for My Ship to Come In." And so, yeah, it kind of didn't really go anywhere, but everybody that hears it really likes it. But with the music business in the state that it's in, it's unlikely it'll get heard unless somebody from your thing goes and looks it up.
There you go. So what's keeping you busy now? You're in the middle of a tour, kind of in the middle of a tour with Kenny Loggins.
Yeah, we it's more like we sort of jump in and out. We don't go extended. We have a 12 or 14-day run coming up, and that's the longest run. He's retiring on November 4th from touring. He's not retiring, but he's retiring from active touring. And so this is the last, for me. So COVID comes, everybody's starving. How are we going to make money? I have a knack for being able to fix things. I'm good at fixing things. And I was really tired of the music business at that time anyway, and had already kind of started pulling away from it a bit, for a number of reasons that are probably too deep to go into in this format. But so I started doing handyman work and found I really enjoyed it. And I didn't touch my bass from probably the front of 2020 till mid 2022 ish. Didn't play a note. And in that time, found that I started liking music again, and didn't know that I hadn't liked it for a while. Because, you know, the music business of LA and the way that things are done, well, music business in general, it's not an artistic endeavor. The key word is business, not music. And so that kind of really, I didn't realize how much I didn't like it anymore. And then I started liking it again. And then the drummer in Kenny's band, he and I were talking about let's just go play around town, you know, make $100 and drink some beer and scream and shout, you know, jump up and down as you do. And so we got together with one of the guys that used to be in Kenny's band, a guy named Guy Thomas, who co-wrote some songs with him, especially "Conviction of the Heart."
Excuse me, who was the drummer that you're talking about?
Dave Salinas.
Okay.
I've known Dave since probably 86, 87, something like that. We were an original band together for 5 minutes. He currently still does teach at PIT. I did go to BIT. That was the excuse I used to get out of Alaska and get some money to do it, because I was poor.
Okay, you know? So you were there during the Jeff Berlin, Bob Magnuson, Carl Schroeder era. Who else was there? Was Ron Eschte there? I can't. Yeah, Putter Smith, maybe, or maybe he was later.
Okay, so Jeff and I used to sit. He was one of my advisors at one point. And Jeff and I used to sit in his room. I think he was there once a week. And we would sit in his room. And because my grandfather had been a heavyweight boxer contender, Jeff is like, probably most people don't know this, he's really into boxing, like really, really into boxing. And at the time, he was really into Roberto Duran. So we would just sit around talking about boxing. We didn't do any, I'm supposed to be in there studying with him. No, we weren't doing that. We're talking about boxing. And then he'd go, "Hey, why don't you set up one of those funk groups? You do that, you know, you do that really well. You do go spicket to spicket, and I'll just play over it, you know." And kids would come in, and suddenly the room's packed, you know, and I'm going spickety spickety, and he's going, you know, and so we would do that. But that's what we actually did, is talk about boxing. Putter Smith, actually, he's such a sweet guy. I have nothing but respect for him and his way, and I feel more that way now than I did then, because I didn't really understand it. But Putter was really, he was like, you know, if you just learn to read well, you could be one of the best session guys around. You have everything you need. You just need to be able to read. And I was kind of like, I just want to be in a rock band. You know, I want to be in Led Zeppelin or the new version.
I always think of him as an upright player. Did he play electric also?
Not to my knowledge, but he was trying to teach me. He was one of my, I think they called him advisors. And he was one of those with Jeff, and also a guy named John Humphrey, who I think is undersold. People don't know much about John Humphrey. He played with Jean-Luc Ponty for a long time. I remember stealing something from him once, whole cloth, and it kind of pissed him off. But he had this chordal bass slapping thing that he did. I was going to try to have my bass up, because in case any bass questions came up, but I was still in the boxes because I just got back yesterday. So he had this thing, and I saw him do it, and I caught it in my head. And then the next time I saw him, I played it, and he was kind of like, wait a minute, you know, don't do that in public. That's my deal. But John was actually really, really good. And people don't talk about him. He was a good bass player. Anyway, so yeah, and Putter was great, sweetest guy, but we weren't working really on upright. We were working on him trying to teach me to read. That was
what his big claim to fame is, right?
I actually don't. Tell me.
He was in a James Bond movie.
Oh God, that's right. I did know that. Yes, you're right. You're right. That's right.
I think he was
looked just like he looks, except he didn't smile. I mean, if Putter sees this, thank you so much, Putter. You were really a good influence. I liked him. He was a good guy.
I interviewed him.
I like all these guys.
Yeah. Bob Magnuson and I had a very friendly rapport. I didn't know him well, but you know what? I think I did take a lesson from him, and I think we actually went to dinner one night down the street from where the school was. Was he involved in your education there as well?
Only by example. I certainly met him and hung out with him a few times, but he wasn't directly connected with me. But I mean, you know, you sit back and watch him play. I mean, you got a connection. That guy was a bad boy. I mean, a
And a
bad,
real gentleman too. Really nice guy.
very nice guy. Very nice. Kind of. I remember him as being kind of quiet-ish, but being very capable player, and just murderously good. I mean, just monster, monster. I don't know what happened to him, but yeah,
He retired a few years ago. I think he's in San Diego.
I think I heard that too. I think you're right.
Yeah. The Kenny Loggins gig, I've known a couple of guys that had the bass chair. Adam Nitty is a pretty good friend. And
Okay.
before that, I'm sure you've heard the name Shem von Schreck.
Well, so Shem and I have been through three of the same. Let me think now. Maybe it's four. Christopher Cross, Don Felder, um, Kenny. Of course, Shem was deep in Kenny, deeply into that Kenny world for a long time. I'm trying to think if there's any more. And the funny thing is that Shem and I have met maybe two or three times, maybe three times. And we've been part of the same group of people for years and years. The guy's a monstrously talented guy. I mean, it's ridiculous. He's one of those guys you just, okay, I'm sorry, we have to kill you because we can't have any more of this going on. Every instrument plays his ass off.
Well, that was what I was getting at with that gig with Kenny Loggins. You have to play electric. I think you have to play keyboard and you have to sing. And I thought you had to play upright too, but Adam said
I don't. Maybe actually, I think that Shem did do that because there were times when Kenny had a kind of an abbreviated band, and so he would do things like "Celebrate Me Home" and "Forever in My Heart." I think that Shem would go over and play keyboards for those because those are keyboard heavy songs, and then maybe the rest of the time he would be playing a regular bass. In terms of stand up, it's really tough to bring a stand up around. I have one of the NS Designs stand up, the fake ones
oh yeah.
that I got for Glenn's gig, and they NS Designs and Corey Rednut there. I don't know if you know Corey.
I know Corey very well and Gary Byers and Ned I've interviewed a few times. And just the week that we're recording this, I did an interview with Rob Turner of EMG Pickups.
Oh well, I need to talk to Rob because I got to get some pictures. I mean, this all just goes round and round, and it gets this very small community. So Corey, Glenn Frey said like on a Tuesday, and we were leaving a week later Tuesday. So hey Wade, yeah man, what do you do about stand up? And I said, there's only one proper answer here, which is what do you want me to do about stand up? Yeah, well, so he had this record called After Hours that he put out right when I was coming into the band, which was basically what I call shuba music, slide sideways. And that would be like The Look of Love and stuff like that. And so there was going to be a section of the show that was that. And we needed to do something. I don't play stand up. That's to me a completely different instrument. It's not electric bass at all. I mean, it shares some commonalities, but that's about it. It's physically much different. It's a whole other thing. So, but these fake stand-ups, with 34-inch fret, it's not fretted, it's actually fretless, but I'm a really good fretless player. So that part didn't bother me. But I did have to get this thing, and then it's funny how the second, even if it's on a stand, the second you go like this inside yourself, you're like, you're suddenly that guy, And the funny thing is, the audience sees you go like that, and they kind of buy it too, And so I did that. But Kenny said so, and Adam put him onto this actually. There's these. I'm going to show you something. These ukulele basses.
Yeah.
These uke basses. Let's see if I can get the thing out. It's just a big ukulele, really.
That's Colin. Okay, Colin. Yeah. Colin. I know the company very well.
Yeah, so he told me Adam had him on that or was using those, and he said, maybe we should try that for the acoustic part of the set. So I call up Kala, and they couldn't have been nicer and more helpful. And bang, I had one instantaneously.
Mike
And
Upton.
huh?
Is that his name? Mike Upton.
I think the guy that I talked to was the owner, whoever that is.
Yeah.
And sorry, I don't remember his name. I'm not trying to dog him out, but he was nothing but kind and helpful. And I had a bass like before I could hang up the phone, and these things are just monstrously good for sounding kind of like a stand-up, but being a little bitty thing, I'd use it, I'd carry it on the carry-on, and they're not expensive, $500 or $600, something like that. It's a massively useful item. Anyway, I'm not going to try to sound like I'm running a commercial, but so I do that. I sing, I play those two types of basses, and that's it. That's all I do. Shim, I can't hardly. I mean, I play keyboards with my elbows. I'm horrible. I can't play. Now, if it was a finger picking thing on acoustic guitar, I'm very good at that. Very, very good at that. Like all that stuff on my records, if you've heard any of that, that's all me. But
I've seen some YouTube videos.
so yes, I do know Shem. We've been through a lot of the same situations together. Massively talented guy. And let's see. I know that because one of the other guys in the band also plays sometimes or sings often, was Ambrosia. And he said the last time he went and played with them, Shem was on drums and singing, of course. Yeah, Shem started as a drummer. I mean, I'm not trying to make this about Shem, but Shem is a really very talented dude, and
very nice. Dude, a bodybuilder, like woo.
I've seen a couple times when he was and wasn't. He's not a very tall guy, but he's burly. He's definitely burly. I have seen one picture where it looked like he was like Schwarzenegger. I mean, he was just looking gnarly. I don't know what was going on there, but
you were talking about gear. What about your electric bass or electric basses? What do you play there?
So with Kenny's gig, I was thinking, man, I got to go out and get myself some boutique-y, spickety, speckety, awesome, hyper expensive bass, and I kept trying all kinds of basses because what I have a really old Fender Precision that Mike Tobias remember Tobias? I bought this bass. Yeah, so he had a shop in Hollywood back in the
on Cahuenga Street.
Mm-hmm. And I used to go in there, try to, get him to, I don't know what I was trying to get him to do, but anyway, I got a old Fender Precision and had him do the neck as a fretless, and we stuck some EMGs in it, and that's on some records and stuff. That is an amazing. It's my what I call a bonk bass, which is that really bonky bonk bonk bonk. But it's yeah. So that, and I have always used Hamers since I left Alaska. They're very gritty, very well-made necks. The neck worked for me. So that's the 5-string that I've had since about 87 has been a Hamer. I mean, it's literally the back is worn all the way to the wood. On the back.
That what Tom Peterson from Cheap Trick, that 12-string basses that he had, those are Hamers, I think.
Yep. I never got any of those, but I kind of wish I had. Also, King's X, I think, uses some of those.
Okay, yeah.
Doug. Of those. So anyway, I'm looking around for a bass, and I had got 2 matched Yamahas for when I started playing with Glenn. They're TRB 1005Js, which apparently is a thing. I didn't know that. So I was going through all my basses trying to figure out what am I going to do with Kenny's thing. I wasn't finding anything that really sounded right. And these were cheap basses. I mean, I think Yamaha, well, they didn't give them to me, but they might as well have. There wasn't much because they knew they were going to go out with Glenn, so I didn't pay much for them. But and I just needed matched basses because he had 2 rigs going around the country all the time. So one's rigs on the way to the next gig, and one's at the gig you're at, And I played one of those and just played through Kenny's stuff with it, and it was like, this is done. I'll take it to the rehearsal, the first rehearsal, and see what they think. Never look back. And
what kind of strings do you use?
I have played GHS Super Steels since Alaska, since the early 80s.
Right up the road from where I'm sitting right now in Battle Creek.
Well, tell them I said, hey, they've been great. I've literally been with them officially since, again, mid to late 80s. I'm an endorser, and I call them up and get strings. You don't go through strings that much, with the basses. You leave them on until they start to bother you. That's what
I found last a really long time. Longer than a lot of the others.
To break them all the time. I mean, I was very attack bass player. I was going to try to find for you this. I used to do these solos with this guy Miguel Mateos in the late 80s and late 80s, early 90s. I played with a guy who's a big rock and Espanol star in South America, Mexico, and all that. Miguel Mateos. He's kind of a classic rock guy for them now. But I would do these big solos, double-handed chordal stuff, a lot of slapping, a lot of spickety-wackety, boom, bing, bang. And I would break strings almost nightly. I'd be like, here we go. But I didn't want to change to a heavier gauge string because I wanted to be able to bend it, and I wanted to spang. I was looking for that. I was a very aggressive bass player.
Yes, I think you've made that very clear.
So I would break strings every night. Anyway, yeah, that's what I'm not that aggressive now, but I think I'm a pretty aggressive bass player even now with Kenny's thing. Kenny has said, basically I sort of made it my own. But, the chair has had some of the best bass players in the world. I mean, Freddie Washington Jr. has been there. Paul Peters from Prince's band. Obviously Nathan East, Shem. I mean, it's big shoes, to fill. If you were of a type to be intimidated, I should be intimidated. I don't intimidate easy, but that's a big lineup of people to try to fit into their shoes. But it's been great, of course, too. I mean, you're up there playing every minute. That you don't coast on that gig at all. You're singing all the time. You're playing all the time. It's tough, actually. It's a hard gig, and the level of musicianship on stage is ridiculous. I mean, Rick Cowling, the guy that also sings sometimes with Ambrosia, he's kind of just off to Kenny's right, is a ridiculously good singer. And Scott Bernard is also a ridiculously good singer, but he's also a monster player. And he and Adam are really good friends, by the way. And we've had a few people on keyboards, but Rob Arthur is going to do the rest of the stuff with us from Peter Frampton's band. It's a friend of mine that I met in Felder's band.
Did I see Tom Brechtline with Kenny one time on drums?
In fact, one of the times that I met Shem was in the airport in Reno, and Kenny was there. And I had met Kenny a few times over the years, so he and I were talking, but Brechtline was there. I think he did it for a while, actually.
I saw him with Wayne Shorter one time at the Musicians Exchange in Fort Lauderdale.
And he was a bad boy then, too, right? He's a bad boy in Kenny's band. He's a bad boy in Wayne Shorter's thing, too. That guy can really play.
John Patitucci also. I was there watching a rehearsal before they took off the next day for Japan. John Beasley was on keyboard, Brechtline, Patitucci, I think a horn player, I don't remember. And there was a guy I went to school with in Miami. I'm sure you've heard the name, John DeFaria. Played guitar with Kenny.
I don't know him.
He was in the Sound Machine, Miami Sound Machine.
I know another guy that did that. I think. No, maybe it was Gloria Estefan. Is that different?
Well, she was the front person of the.
I knew this guy Tim Mitchell.
I know Tim. He's from Detroit. He's a guitar player. Played with Bob Seger. I think he's with Shakira now.
I think that may be right. Yeah, I think so. I think that's right. Yeah, but he was friends of another good friend of mine from Alaska, a singer named Kelly Moneymaker. And Kelly was, I know, she's from, she used to sneak into the bar that we played at with that band I'm talking about in Alaska. She would sneak in, and she was like 14 until they kicked her out. She'd come and watch that band because it was a good band. But Kelly knew Tim pretty well, and I think I've met him through her. And I don't see him at all nowadays. But
I haven't seen him in forever, and it's funny. These guys from Michigan, I had to go down to Miami to meet them. That's where we both were. Didn't
well,
know.
that's the thing about all these guys from Alaska. I didn't. Well, John Button, I think he's in his maybe mid to late 40s. I'm not actually sure. And I met him down here. And I know some of the other guys, like Frank Symes used to do Roger's gig a lot and did a bunch of keyboard orchestration for the big Quadrophenia thing. And Lauren Gold, I know from Felder's thing. And yeah, it's weirdly small. It's a weirdly small world.
Let me ask you about playing bass and learning bass. For Bass Players Only is actually a bass instruction site. I've
Sure.
got students from pretty much all 50 states in the US and I don't know, 50, 60 some countries worldwide coming to For Bass Players Only every day to learn bass.
Cool.
And most of them are men in their 50s, 60s, 70s. They're not career bound. They just want to do it and they want to have fun and play some classic rock riffs or some blues shuffles or a little funk R&B. And I learned some new words from you today. Spickety spackety or what?
Spickety, yeah. It's a spickety. It's a particular sound, yeah.
Yeah. But the point is they're not setting out to make a career out of music. They just want to have fun. Maybe they've dabbled in it over the years. They've wanted to do this for a while. So I want to take this opportunity to ask you, and having given you the context, what advice do you have for those folks who want to learn bass? What do you think they should be thinking about?
The very first thing I would say, and it's the thing that I think I say almost all the time when people talk about what should I do? The question is, what should I do? And it could be, what about my kids want to learn? But what should I do? If you want to play bass, you go play bass. First thing. Music is not the province of the professional musician. Music is the province of humanity. And if we want to go make a noise, go make that noise. I couldn't be more serious about that. The philosophy of you have every right to go make your noise. Go make your noise. Whatever that entails, go do that. If it takes a little work, if it takes a little money or whatever it takes, do that. That's the first thing. I think I'm a terrible musician in the sense that I don't approach music as a technical exercise in any way. I am absolutely all eyes roll back in the head, kind of just feel my way to the thing. I don't read music worth a damn. I can read chord charts and some rhythmic stuff, but I know very little about music technically, but I know a great deal about playing it, and I know how to get at the thing. And the thing is what I care about: the energy, the connection, the organic expression of the tribe of humanity, right? I know that starts sounding a little bit woo, but I'll tell you, it's part of what Kenny's whole deal is. I'm positive he and I haven't talked about this, but this band and Kenny are very sensitive to and very good at creating that ball between us and the audience. And halfway through, they start getting that look, that this is not just a concert. This is church. This is the church of humans. And that's what we're doing. That's what I'm interested in. As far as just the mechanics of it, I mean, so obviously I'm 63 today. I don't know. Some people are going to be surprised that know me, but, I take a lot of ibuprofen and, some things are certain things are kind of hard.
Let me just jump in, if I may. A lot of those people that I described, men in their 50s, 60s, 70s, a lot of them have arthritis and tendonitis, and some of them are recovering from surgery. A guy had shoulder surgery, another had hip replacement surgery. So I just throw that into the context, if that would
I think that dealing with that, so okay, so most people are going to end up being in this context that you're talking about. They're going to be weekend warriors, right? I mean, they're going to have another career, or maybe they're retired or whatever it is, but they just want to play. So my initial comment still is go play, man. It's so good for your soul, and people need to hear us making music. Computers have done a lot for music, but they're not great for other parts of music. Humanity, making the noise and generating our spirit through the instrument. Go do that. Obviously, some concepts that are big in teaching, you're way better off to play 15-20 minutes a day than to play 2 hours in one sitting a week. That's a huge thing. Can you still hear me?
Absolutely, yeah. Hear you just fine.
I would say that at that age, I don't know that I would try to learn much about the technical aspects. I would just try to make the noise. I don't know if I think that trying to get buried into charts and trying to learn how to read and stuff is really going to yield that much results. I know guys that would not agree with me at all, but I think just go do it. Go play, man.
I don't agree with you.
Huh?
I don't agree with you. I mean, it
Yeah.
depends on the individual. You could read charts, that's fine, or you could read,
Oh, no. Like if you want to give
Charlie Parker Omnibook and shred that if you want, but you don't have to. Or your James Jamerson Standing in the Shadows of Motown. Or there's another book I have with Duck Dunn's lines. It's called Soul Fingers. I was reading through that the other day.
I would definitely, so maybe qualify, I would definitely go after that kind of stuff. Learn what you think is great. So you hear something. I mean, like I learned Teen Town, I couldn't play that ever. Hardly. I arguably still can't play it. But boy, did I need to make that noise. So like if you hear Sitting on the Dock of the Bay or whatever, learn how to play that, make that noise. So sorry, I think you're right. I think that if it's that kind of studying, I'm fully for that. I just don't, what I would say is don't get buried in technicality. Go play.
Well, I think maybe what you're saying is don't go learn all your modes and scales just because they say you're supposed to. What are you supposed to do with all those notes? We're here to make music. We're not here, okay, let's do a Dorian, let's do a Phrygian sharp six, let's do, so.
Boy, that's just like, that stuff just kill me. But that it all has a place. And for a lot of people, that's the path. Not for me, but I guess what I'm saying is just go play for sure. If you feel like you'll be better at it and it'll make you more facile and make you more hireable even, then definitely do the studying. Anything that you feel like you want to do, you should absolutely do it. But definitely play. Go play. Get in it. Put your music boots on and get wading in the river.
Oh, I love it. I love it. What about the future, Wade? What else is coming up for you as far as you can see? Or maybe something that I threw you a two-parter before, but this is like a one, maybe two-parter. Or is there something else that you haven't done yet that you'd like to do?
Well, I'm a human first and a musician second. So there's always things I want to do. And I think that everything you do as a human informs your musicality, I think. The becoming professionally a handyman was one of the best things that ever happened to me musically. Not playing for literally didn't pick up an instrument for a couple of years. That was one of the best things that happened to me musically. Conversely, or along the same lines, suddenly I'm doing the Kenny thing. And that has been the most satisfying big stage gig I've ever done. And I'm not slagging any of these other things. Everybody, all of those things had wonderful aspects to them. But playing with Kenny has been the best fit, both in terms of he himself, the band, and the music. He's very generous. So, it makes it easy to show up, I guess.
No, I did sit in for I did watch a sound check one time with Kenny and the band, And what really got my attention was what a gentleman he was. He was so kind, and he wouldn't issue edicts. He would ask, he would suggest, he would request. Let's do a little more of this, a little more. I mean, just it gave me a good feeling to see that.
It's a very organic scene. I mean, really, really organic in terms of, and Kenny is still, he's 76 years old. He still gives a damn. He still warms up twice a day vocally, blah, 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 blah. Every day, this guy works hard at being the best Kenny Loggins that he knows how to be. And of course, he's the guy that knows how to do that. To go further with that, he'll hear stuff. So the tunes kind of morph, changing parts and stuff, and he'll say, well, let's just change this part here because I think it'll be better this way. And so we don't really have sound checks per se. We have small micro rehearsals. So there's this one thing, hey, this one thing, and we'll fix that one thing. We don't hardly ever play through a whole song at sound check. It's more like these little micro rehearsals. I swear to God, we never played through the set before I did my first concert. And in fact, that's actually kind of how things go these days. Like with Glenn, I never even met Glenn until about 10 minutes before the first sound check on the first gig. And, he's significantly height, or was, he's not a tall guy. I am quite tall, and I'm 6'2". So when I first saw him, I was like, oh God, he's really small. So I kind of leaned way out, just stuck my hand out to shake hands with him, so I wouldn't loom over him. But it's very common that you won't rehearse before the first show with some of the people. Felder, same thing. Anyway, that got away from your point. Sorry, where were we?
I was just talking. You were saying about you were. It sounded like you were talking about him as a leader, and I said I witnessed some of that, and he was very kind and very gentle when he was dealing with the band and saying, "No, that's terrible. No, hey, let's do it more. Hey, I got an idea, or let's, That's what I was saying.
Stage back then. Oh, you said you knew Adam, so probably it was Adam that was there.
No, it was Shem, actually.
Okay, yeah. Well,
I know Adam from it's funny, how do I know Adam? From I think I probably met him at Bass Player Live, and we've hung out in Germany, and we hung out in Philadelphia. But it was funny because it was the last day of it was Warwick Base Camp in Markneukirch in Germany, and Adam said, boy, I'm been so turned around because of the time difference, and from Nashville to Germany, and he said, I heard or read somewhere it takes about 1 day for every hour of time change to get used to it. And I said, what's the time difference from here back home? He says 6 hours. I said, how long have you been here? He says 6 days. I said, when are you going home? He says, tomorrow.
Tomorrow, of course. What I used to do, and in fact, I did this one time where we played a gig with Felder and Daltrey, which is when I played with Daltrey, where he used a bunch of Felder's band as his backup band. We did what I always call a commando raid, where we fly over day 1, day 2 sound check play, day 3 fly back. It's just total commando raid. The way that always works for me, and I've done a lot of international playing, is I stay up till local bedtime, whatever that is. And in the case of that gig, by the time we got there, it ended up that I was awake for about 36 hours. I mean, I was practically hallucinating, but then the next day I got up at the regular local time, and I was fully functional. It's you feel weird, but that's pretty functional.
When my son was 11, I took him with me to Bass Player Live. So we had a 3-hour time difference. I said, you really should see the baked potato. And I took him to the baked potato. We couldn't get into the early show. So the show didn't start till 11, which was really 2:00 in the morning for what our bodies thought it was. Yeah. But my wife wasn't too happy, but he saw, it was Greg Matheson and Michael Landau and Abe Laboriel Sr. and Jim Keltner, I think. And we still talk about that. He's 23 now. And
That's a ridiculous band. That's a ridiculous band.
Yeah.
I mean, those guys are some of the very best at each station that exists, literally.
Yeah. Awesome. Well,
And
Wade, I could go on and geek out like this forever talking
clearly,
about.
I'm a talking son of a bitch for sure.
I do have my signature sign-off question is typically, what would you be if you weren't a bass player? But if you can modify that a little bit for your situation, you're just something outside of music, what would you be?
I actually know the answer. And a lot of my brothers are scientists. A couple of my brothers are scientists. I was on a flight from Lausanne to Paris, and next to me was a guy who it turned. He said, how did this happen? He described a problem about robotics, and I started just kind of talking. And this is again in probably 86, 87. I did a lot of stuff right around then. And I just started talking about what I thought about what he was doing and what I knew about technology at the time. And he said at the end of my kind of rant, as you can tell, I can just get going and not stop. He said, would you like a job at a robotics firm in Lyon, France? We need guys like you. We need guys that can think like that don't know what the limitations are and don't see a reason why there should be. And I have never forgotten that, because that is a separate thing that I would have been really, I think, good at, and I would have been interested in. Yeah, so that, I think.
Wow, fascinating. And,
Yeah.
nowadays it's talked about a lot, but back in those days, I think it was maybe just starting to be talked about, unless, not talking about an Isaac Asimov book or something like that. But I mean, just as far as the day-to-day conversations that come up now, it's not so unusual today, but back then that's really something.
Well, it was a really fun idea, and
Sounds like you turned them down, though.
I turned them down. I did. Well, and the chances are really good. At 63, I don't know that there's going to be a big line of people looking to hire me, just because there's not that many real live gigs comparatively anymore anyway. So I might be going right back to being a handyman by the end of this year. And you know what? That's okay.
Give me your phone number.
Where do you want this TV, man? I mean, it's literally that, but it's actually satisfying. You can make a decent amount of money, and I'm good at it. I'm good at
a good skill to have. My father was very good at that. My brother is very good at it. I didn't get that gene.
No. Well, I don't have the gene where I'm any good at having like a boss. I mean, I have bosses, and they can be very bossy, but it's a different context. Yeah, I'm not good at somebody saying, "Hey, go move that, that pallet over there to this place" or something. That's not me.
Well, this is great. Wade Biery, thanks so much for sitting down with me for a lot longer than I had intended to keep you. And I really appreciate that, because you've got some great stories and you know a lot of people. And I'm sure we could just go on and talk forever. So we do need to end it at some point, and we've been going for a while. So thank you so much. I really appreciate it. And I wish you all the best. And maybe I'll even get to see you with Kenny before the.
That'd be great. I'd love to, and I'd love to meet you in person. I love your thing, your format here. I love it, and keep on keeping on.
Thank you.
All you guys keep playing too.
That's right. Listen to the man. You're watching ForBassPlayersOnly.com. I'm John Liebman, founder and first baseman. A lot of people think they're too old or it's too late for them to learn how to play an instrument. So I created ForBassPlayersOnly.com for adults, mostly over 50, who want to play bass, because I believe you're never too old and it's never too late to experience the joy and the pleasure of making music. ForBassPlayersOnly.com. I'll see all of you right here, same time, same place next week. In the meantime, let's play bass.